Hello everyone, welcome back to my Let's Replay channel. Once again, this is Andrew T coming at you. And no, this is not a vlog review. This is actually a retelling of the Ender's Game book. My very first video on this channel was a retelling slash synopsis of my favorite book of all time, Armor by John Stakely. And this was one of my other favorites growing up as well. And I've not seen the movie. I refuse to see the movie because I've heard it is not very good compared to the book. And the book was magical for me when I was a kid. I must have had it read to me first time by my dad when I was 8 or 9, and then I read it again by myself when I was about 12 or 13. It's been one of my favorite books since then. So, like I said, this is going to be similar to my very first video where I just kind of go through the book at my own pace, and it's going to be not bullet points, but it's going to be pretty close. So I'm not going to go over all the dialogue and everything like that. I can't. It's doing all from memory, and I haven't read the book in a couple years, but this is all for me. One take. Let's go. So it starts off on Earth in the future, and they're in the middle of a war. They call it the Formic Wars because they are fighting what they call ants. Basically because they look like giant insects or arthropods in the future, and that's how their ships look as well. So yeah, it's pretty similar to armor, but in this case, they call them the Formics or the buggers, just because they're insect-like. So anyway, it starts off on Earth, and you have the main character, Andrew Wiggin, whose nickname is Ender because he couldn't pronounce it when he was younger, so that nickname stuck. He has a sister named Valentine and a older sister named Valentine and an oldest brother named Peter. Now, one of the reasons this book really struck me is because Ender was a third child, and I'm a third child. Except I have an older sister and an older brother. So it was not quite the same, but pretty similar. So I kind of liked that he had the same name as I did, even though he went by a different name. So it starts off at school, and he's the third child in his family, which is very rare in today's United States because, there's a limit on how many kids you can have. That overpopulation has gotten to the point where every country has to basically have strict standards when it comes to children. But he was an exception, so he gets picked on in school. He's called 30, or Thirdy, 30, just because he's so different for being a third child in a 1 to 2 max, usually children, United States. So typical school stuff. He's in elementary school, or if you prefer, the English version, primary school, and he's about to get his monitor off. We're basically between certain ages, I believe 1 to 8 or 9, I think it's 8, you have a monitor placed on the back of your neck, and basically anyone from Big Brother can see exactly what's going on. So today he's getting his monitor off. So any bullies or anything want to do anything to him after that have now free reign because he's different, and they won't be immediately snitched on by the monitor in his neck. So he gets it off, and immediately after school, everyone, the most famous bully in class comes up to him, and with his 2 friends behind him, and he's like, all right, you know what's coming, about to get on to Pound Town. So Ender knows what's coming. He knows why he's doing it. He's a brilliant kid. He's a genius. So he does anything he can with a bigger and stronger opponent. He takes him by surprise and then kicks him hard in the head and then hard again in, I believe, the testicles when he's down. So his 2 cronies are really afraid because he's like, if you try to do this to me again, that's going to be you on the ground. And he goes home and immediately you think like, whoa, this kid's either a badass or a psycho. So he goes home and he's immediately tormented by his oldest brother, Peter, because he doesn't have the monitor on anymore. So Peter's a brilliant child as well, as long as his older sister Valentine. Valentine's very sweet, very protective of Ender, but his oldest brother wants to play a game called, I believe, what was it? Humans and Formics, or Buggers and something. I can't remember the name of the game. But anyway, whoever's the bugger puts on a mask and then gets a crap beat out of him by the human, basically. So Peter forces him to put on the mask and then just, pushes him down. And Ender knows there's nothing he can do against Peter. Like, Peter's so much bigger, so much stronger than him, so much older, that there's no way he can fight back. So this time he just kind of sits there and takes it because he knows that's the only thing that's going to, save him is not to fight back in this case. So Peter immediately starts stepping on his crotch, and Valentine's there and is like, hey, back off. Don't do anything more, or else I have some incriminating evidence in my safety deposit box at my bank, and that anything ever happened to me or Ender, it's going to come to light. And I know you want to go into public office later, so that's going to ruin you for your life if you do that. So Peter tries to laugh it off, like, oh, y'all are so gullible. You thought I was actually going to do stuff. And Ender and Valentine are just sitting there going, yeah, whatever. We know you're a cruel, sadistic bastard. So after these two incidents, the next day, his family gets a visit from the military. So they come immediately and go, yeah, you know what your boy did yesterday? And the parents are like, no, what? He's like, he got in a fight with this guy that was bigger, older, and stronger than him, and he won. And he hurt him bad. So his parents sit Ender down, and they ask him, why'd you need to hurt him that bad when you'd already won? And, he's crying because he doesn't like to hurt people. Like, he's one of those people that sticks up for himself, but he hates to see other people in pain and cause other people pain. So he starts crying, and they ask him, well, why'd you have to hit him the other two times? He's like, because his two friends were there, and I couldn't just win that battle. I had to win all the ones after that. I had to, avoid all the fighting in the future by showing them I could do this to them, so they wouldn't ever think of attacking me or harming me. And his parents are like, whoa. And the military is like, you're coming with us tomorrow. So they basically take him up to battle school, which is for all the genius kids that are, I think, age around 7 or 8. And they take them all and just start indoctrinating them into the military because the war is still on. Like, it hasn't gone away. They repelled the original invasion, but now they could come back at any time. So they're telling the citizenry, hey, this is not good. We still need to train commanders for whenever they come back because it could be the end of our species because they were kicking our butts the last time. And a hero of the Earth named Mazer Rackham, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but I'm sure it's Mazerrakham. So Rackham. I just always call him Rackham in my head. So Mazer Rackham basically won the battle by himself, and then he got shot off in his face to, patrol the galaxy and, protect everyone. So this far in the future, there's a couple of technological advances that have happened. One is artificial gravity. So there's no need for spinning ships or anything like that, or centrifugal force to keep you on the level. And the other is faster than light travel. So the only problem with that is relativity is still in effect. So the faster you go, everything around you kind of speeds up, and you just kind of stay the same. So if you take like a month to get somewhere, it'll be like 20 years back on Earth. So by the time you stop and regular communication can resume, it's going to be people that are either dead and gone, forgot about you, or 20 years older and don't care about you anymore. So that is just a reality of the situation now in this future of the planet Earth. So all the countries sent up their best to this battle school. They sent up their best and brightest, youngest kids just so they can be totally loyal to the planet. So whenever the time comes, and they do have to fight, if they have to fight at all, because they don't know when the enemy's going to be back, they can fight without any home country ties holding them back against defending and attacking their fellow man. But that's the idea. But the reality is that on the space flight up to the battle station, Ender's already getting picked on. He's in a seat by himself. He's a little bit smaller for all the kids up there because he's a little bit younger than about kids up there. I think he's about 1 or 2 years younger than most of the kids up there, just because he is so brilliant. He is a genius. So, it's in artificial gravity. The guy comes out and is like, hey, keep your hands to yourself. Don't do anything. And immediately what kids do is they want to mess with people because they told them not to. So Ender gets a little whack from the back of his seat, from people behind him. He hears giggling. Then I'll whack again. And he's like, all right. They're coming in pretty similar intervals. So he's like, third time. And he's like, all right. So third time, he just goes, catches it, and then just slams the arm down as hard as he can on the backrest of his seat. So what happens is twofold. Because there's no gravity at this point, then he breaks his arm, and then from that, and as he continues to pull down, he launches the guy behind him up into the ceiling, having him bounce around a bit. So the instructor comes back and is like, "All right, you're going straight to the medical bay as soon as we get up there. Let's get you back in your seat." And he's like, "I told y'all not to touch anyone. Like, everyone up here is as smart as y'all or smarter, and some of y'all, tested well, some of y'all didn't test as well." And he's like, points to Anders like, "You, why do you think that is? Why, because all the kids are thinking, oh, someone had to have the highest." And so Anders says correctly, well, maybe the person got the highest scores on the mental aspect of the test wasn't quite the highest on the physical aspect, because he is the smallest kid in there. And the instructor's like, "Hot dang, you're right." And so he's immediately putting a crosshair on Ender as being, one, the one with the highest test score, and two, being favored a little bit by the staff there already. So they literally put a target on his back. So he gets up to the battle school, and he immediately misses his sister, because his parents were kind of in the picture, kind of not. They're just kind of regular parents. But he adores his older sister, Valentine. And, he sees this as a opportunity to get away from Peter and kind of, forge his own path a little bit and just see what happens. So he gets put in a class and immediately stands out. Just because the first day he hacks another kid's computer that was picking on another kid and fakes a post on the overhead screen that he says, "I'm watching your butt," and he signs his name. And because everything's logged, they think it's coming from his terminal. So, everyone's laughing at him. So the bully gets kind of bullied in return. And this is kind of the start of Ender's whole battle school experience, kind of always being one step ahead. Because a couple weeks later, all the other kids kind of figure out how to do it, but he did it on the first day. So there's a subplot going on of the general named Graf. He's basically in charge of battle school. He's, he's the big honcho. He's the head cheese. He's the guy that is responsible for bringing up the next commander for the Great War when it happens. So Ender goes to classes. He makes a couple of friends, The kid that was getting bullied, he becomes friends with him. His name's Eli. And they get introduced to the battle room. Basically, it is a location. It's a big, I won't say cube. It's a big hollowed out cube is what you can call it. And there's a gate at the top left corner and a gate on the opposite side of the bottom right corner. Two armies line up, and then they go out into the middle, and when they say start, they start. So what happens in there is that they have specialized suits on that anywhere you shoot the body part or, center mass, if you hold the laser there long enough, it basically incapacitates that arm. So if you have an arm out like this or up out, if it gets shot long enough in that position, basically it's saying that, hey, you lost that arm and you can't use it anymore, but it's still there. So whatever last position it was, that's how your arm is going to be until they unfreeze everyone and the game ends. So the other thing is they have their laser pistols, so it's a continuous stream, but it's not like they can slice people up. Like I said, they have to keep it on one portion of a person. And then the whole idea is to get enough people down to the other person's gate. I believe it's, I can't remember the exact number, but they need, I think, around 10 or 8 to 10, and then have another person go through the gate to win the game. It's either that or you destroy everyone's army first. And, usually what happens, though, is that the other army gets destroyed, and then they just leisurely go down with that number of people and win. And if not, they tie if they don't have enough people. So what's happened is that most of the time, the way it's done is that, the other army wipes out the other army, then, they try to keep enough people to win the game at the end. So Ender immediately sees a couple of things that he can do to be better, and he befriends this older girl named Petra to kind of teach him the ropes of, what's the best things to do, how the best way to shoot, the best way to aim, things like that. One's like you can shoot your own arm, so it's always static in front of you. So that way you just kind of have to move your body instead of having to make minute adjustments with your arm. because trying to hold it steady with your arm is a lot easier when it can't move. So teach him a couple little tricks, and they get to be friends. And Ender starts teaching these things to the other people in his launch group as well as taking self-defense courses, because there's a bully. Again, any school is going to have a bully. So this bully's name is Bonzo. Bonzo Madrid, I believe. So he's a battle commander of an army there. I believe it's Maybe not. I can't remember. Salamanders. Yeah, I think it's the Salamanders. Anyway, doesn't matter. So he's immediately condescending to all his subordinates. He treats them like dirt, and he hates anyone that can threaten his position as, a smart commander. So about 6 months in, the higher-ups and the teachers kind of catch on that Ender's doing a lot better than all the other launchies in his group. So they're like, well, let's put him in an army. It's like, which one? They've already got a target painted on him. He's, yeah, but he's made a ton of friends, and, he knows how to build bridges. It's like, we don't need someone that can build bridges. We need someone that can win wars. So they send him to Bonzo's army. So they make him a launchie in that army, and it's very well known that he's pissed off that he got someone brand new in his team that's going to mess up his win-loss streak. So he's like, you will do nothing the entire time, but just sit there in the corner, and you will not fire your weapon at all. So Ender, being a good little soldier, is like, you know what? Even if I don't like this guy, I'm going to respect the chain of command and do what I'm told. So Bonzo wins some and he loses some, but Ender's at the very top of the leaderboard because he has a perfect accuracy, because he hasn't shot his weapon once. So he's at the very top of leaderboards. And even in one game where at the very end, Ender just gets fed up because the guy's obviously not a very good commander. He wins and loses. He loses games that he shouldn't because he won't ever let anyone underneath him make any decisions. It all has to come from him. If he gets knocked out, no one knows what to do, and the other team just wipes the floor with him. So one time, Ender just gets fed up with it. He's in the corner. Everyone knows the deal by now. He's not going to attack. He's been told not to shoot. So they've been ignoring him for a while. So what happens is that at one game they're losing. Ender kind of goes around everyone, does a sneak attack, and then wins the battle by going through the gate. And even though they won, his commander's pissed because he showed that he was going to lose if he hadn't have done that. And he's like, "You're transfer out of here, get out of here," So they transfer him out. He goes to a little bit better squad with Petra and a couple other people, and does pretty well there. And he's allowed to shoot in this army. And eventually, because he hadn't shot before in a real game, his stats go down from number 1 to like number 50 or whatever, or the last. But then as he gets more training with Petra and a couple other people, it goes back near the top again. So another couple months doing this, Bonzo immediately hating him, and him just getting better, and they decide to give him his own army. So this is unheard of. He's been there, I think, a couple years, like 2 or 3 years at this point. So he's gone through these long stretches with these armies as a launchie, then with the Bonzo's army, then with the other army, I believe was Rat at that time. So they decide, you know what? Graf and the upper people at the battle school are like, all right, let's see what he can do now, because he's excelling, like I said, faster than anywhere else. So they give him his own army. And Dragon was basically a loser army back in the day, and apparently they got rid of it because no one wanted to be on the team anymore. So they bring it back and they give it to Ender. So while all this is going on, there's arcade rooms in the battle school, but Ender plays these games sometimes. But the game he likes the most is basically a free roaming game where you gotta go, you have tasks, and you do, and it's in like this whole fantasy setting. So during this game, it's actually a game which measures your personality and kind of your not your mind, I don't want to say, but it measures kind of who you are as a person. The longer you play it, the more data they get, and the more it can kind of show you what kind of person you are. If you're sadistic, if you're kind, if you're empathetic, whatever the case may be. So he's been playing this game a lot, and at the very end of this game, there's always one choice to make. There's a big giant that offers you 2 drinks. One will kill you, one will let you go on. The only thing is, though, no one's ever gotten past this because every single time they pick a drink, it kills you. Ender won't let it go. So he plays this game every day since he gets there. It's been years now, and he can't win this game. And he's like, there shouldn't be anything I can't win. It's just in his head. There should be a way to beat this. So, back to his army. He gets Dragon, and he gets all these, cast-offs from other armies on his roster, and these a couple of launchies or new people again. And, he's like, all right. This is what they gave me. This is what I'm going to do. He has Petra as one of the... No, he doesn't have Petra. He has his whole brand new army. So he has none of his friends to help him. So he's on his own again, starting over. And he immediately lets his army know that, hey, you stick with me. You do what I tell you to and buy into what I'm doing, then we'll win. We will win the whole thing. So he picks a couple of battalion commanders. And like I said, usually they have one commander and they just instruct their troops on the battle plan beforehand, and then kind of, be a battlefield general in the battle room whenever the thing starts, so they can tell people what to do until they get knocked out, and they can't say anything. So Ender turns this all on his head. So, you know what? I'm going to have battalion commanders here. So he gets like five leaders on his army and says, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Here's my overall plan, but everyone here is going to have an assignment to do, and then if something goes wrong or you see an opening or something you can take advantage of, you can deviate from my plan and do something that will affect the overall battle. If you see that opportunity, take it. So it's a whole new way to do things, and they start training for, I think, 3 or 4 months on the way their battles go and how to use everything. And the way... I almost forgot to say that the battle room is not just blank. It has what they call stars in there, where basically big cubes that they have just floating around in there, and they can, and whoever sets up the game beforehand, i.e. the teachers, can set it up in different formations, kind of like, think paintball, but in a 3D environment. So Ender immediately starts winning. Like, from first game out, just wins. And he keeps on winning and winning and winning and winning. He has not lost yet as a commander. He beats Petra's old army that was... She was a commander at that time. Beats his old army, Rat, and then, so they start switching up the rules a bit. So he's winning too easily, so the teachers and Graf like, you know what, let's throw some curveballs at him. So, like, alright, so this time we'll have just 1 star out there, or we'll give you orders late on when the time is, so you won't have any time to prepare, or we'll give you 2 armies to fight against. And as these are piling up, Ender still wins, but it's getting a little bit more narrow in the margin. Like the 2 armies won, he had to basically use all their miscommunication against them, because the 2 battle commanders couldn't decide on what the best strategy was, and Ender kind of just used superior tactics to whittle them down so he can get people through the gate. The worst one, though, is whenever he fights Bonzo's army. So they get there late again. They're all around their gate, and they look through it because it's transparent. You can see into the battle room for where we were at, and there's nothing in there. There's no stars, there's no cover, nothing. So they look down at the other gate and like, hey, there's no one down there either. Maybe they didn't tell them. And so Ender's like, and brings all his army back and just points around the doorway where they can't see. And he's like, and he tells his battle commanders, since they've obviously let us know exactly where they are, let's go kill them. So, but how to do that without getting immediately killed by like every laser as soon as you go through. So this comes back to how you stiffen up whenever you're shot on your limbs. So they put everyone in let me back up a bit here, in a position for the largest people in the army, their arms out straight, their legs out straight too. So, and then they have the littlest guys kind of hug him and put their legs around him, and then they start throwing him out. So they have basically, they just see a head over here and an arm out shooting out, and the rest of it is just the back of some guy's body. So they can't really shoot him enough to stop him. So they basically throw half their army out there and then just taking pot shots, and they don't move from the entrance because they don't know what else to do. So they just they get annihilated, and there's like that was he gets fed up at this point. He's like, he knows what's being done to him and the hypocrisy of it all. About everyone's going against him, trying to beat him, including the teachers. So after the battle's over, Ender just goes, "I beat you again." He's like, "Oh no, you're fighting against Salamander." He's like, "No, I beat you." And he just unfreezes everyone, which is kind of against policy. Usually you do your team first and then the other team. He's like, forget it. He's fed up. And he's like, I'm done with this. And he says this was the dumbest thing ever to have people already in formation around there where they can't move and there's nowhere to run. So since I knew exactly where they were, he lets his smallest, youngest guy in his army say, "Yo, Bean, what would you do if you had all this advantages against us?" And he gives him a great answer. It's like, "Yeah, I would have done this and totally mopped the floor with y'all." And he just looks at the commander, and the commander's just like, he's not gonna bite on the bait. So Ender just gets out of there. He's ticked, and he's like, "Not doing it anymore. Nope, this is bullcrap. I'm through playing this game. They're stacking against me. They're freaking expecting him to win all this time, and he expects himself to win. He doesn't ever think he can lose, so it's kind of eating him up inside. So all this pressure on a kid that's barely, I think, 11 years old at this point. So since he joined battle school, he knew that people would be out to get him. So he was taking like a little bit of self-defense courses just to keep in shape, and along with the regular workouts, and kind of know the best ways to move his body in order to take out someone one-on-one if it came to that. Well, after this last defeat, Bonzo is so mad that he's going to do something to Ender. And a couple days later, he and a couple of his buddies from his army, his commanders, catch him in the shower. And so Ender knows exactly what's going on. He immediately turns on all the hot water, scalding hot around him. So that way, if they have to get at him, they have to go through scalding hot water at this point. So he's all sudsed up from showering, so he's got a little bit of advantage there, and he taunts Bonzo. "Oh, let's just say how brave you were when you had to beat up one naked kid in the shower with two of your friends." And so he's like, "You two stay out of this," and then he gets naked too and starts coming at him straight through the hot water to get at him. And he's apparently been taking self-defense classes too, because the first couple of things Ender tries to get him out of the way or defend against him, he kind of anticipates. So what happens is, eventually, nothing's really happened to Ender yet. They're just kind of jostling, and he gets caught in a bear hug with Bonzo above and behind him. So in the self-defense class, you basically use your back foot to kick the guy in the crotch behind you. So Bonzo gets up on his tiptoes, so he can't do that. And when he does that, he gets a little bit of air above his head. So Ender just goes wham and throws his entire weight and leg strength behind and just hits it straight into his face. And then immediately knocks him out. Kid goes down straight into the path of the scalding hot water, and his friends are screaming, "Ah!" And they get him out of there. And the kid's Bonzo's bleeding from the nose and mouth, and after that, Ender is just sickened with himself. He hurt another kid, he goes back to his room, just collapses on the bed, sleeps, then gets up, takes another shower, comes back to his bed, realizes it's got blood on it from the back of his head where he hit Bonzo, throws his mattress out, and eventually the commanders come in and like, "Okay, you can't stay here anymore. We're transferring you." So he's like, "Fine, I'm done, whatever." So, but it's not what he thinks. They're transferring him to command school now. So battle school is for a certain age group, and now he's being pushed on to command school. where it's just insane because usually it's for 16 to 18-year-olds. And he's being sent there now as like a 13-year-old, I think, a 12 or 13-year-old at this point, to be groomed to command his own army for real. So it's got a little bit more real for him at this point, and it's like, oh, all right, whatever. So he goes, but he doesn't want to go. He still doesn't want to go. So they send him down to Earth for a vacation, and his sister Valentine has to convince him to go back up and, do it for her, or else if the Formics come back, they're going to kill everyone, including her. So he does it for his love for her, goes back into a situation he hates just so he can protect his sister. Now, going off on the second part of this book, like I said, Ender's a genius, and so are his older sister and oldest brother, Peter. What they've been doing all this time when Ender's been up in the command school or battle school for years, is they've been getting online anonymously and posting political, I guess you could call them, it'd probably be, they called it the nets back then, and this was way ahead of its time. They called it the nets, this global communications device where you can post on there. They call it posting on nets. So they post all these political things, and over the years they become really well-known pundits. Like they are, think about if it was a political blogger now. This is what they are, and at this time, even though they're so young, people are listening to them and taking their voices as gospel for kind of the way the world is and the right way to do things. Because they can see that if this war ever ends, all the other countries that are so united right now against the Formics are going to splinter off again and try to, attack their neighbors and get resources and just expand just like they did before. Because that's what the world was right before the attack happened. So they go by the name, Valentine goes by the name of Demosthenes, and then Peter's name is Locke, after the famous philosophers, I guess. So they've been getting some real power and real political sway with basically everyone in the world, because their followings are so huge, but they're still anonymous. So in this world you can have anonymity on the internet. Who knew? But because they're so young, they knew that their opinions would just get laughed off if everyone knew how young they were. So that's why they've been posting anonymously. And Peter wants to be basically the hegemon, the world leader at the end of this thing. And Valentine's like, I'll help you get there, then I want out. I want to be done with you. You're still a piece of crap. You're not a very good human being. You're doing all this for political gain and just for your own selfish ends. But I'll help you because, one, your family, and two, I can kind of keep an eye on you and rein you in when someone needs to. So that's happening back on Earth while Ender's up doing all this. So back to Ender, he goes to command school and is immediately put in, it's like a simulator basically. So he's in his own little chair. He has his own headset and gives commands to ships now. Instead of soldiers now, it's ships in a whole 3D environment. So he starts, practicing basic maneuvers with the ships, how they go, what their weapons are, what the oldest models to the newest models and what their capabilities are, because if humanity ever had to fight against them again, some of the stuff out in the galaxy is kind of old at this point from just going around light speed. They haven't been replaced yet. So they start Ender on these easy battles, and they give him his best commanders from battle school as his lieutenants, as his squad commanders. So they got Petra, they got Alai, the original guy he stood up for bullying, and they got Bean, the little kid that embarrassed Bonzo after he won, and I think one or two more. Anyway, they were side characters that didn't have a whole lot of time in the book. But he's got about 5, squad commanders. So, he does the same thing he did in battle school. He's like, all right, here's my overall plan. Here's y'all's assignments, and if you see anything that can help win the battle, go ahead and do it within reason. So they start with some easy battles, but just like in battle school, they start getting harder. So the amount of ships Ender has, gradually gets a little bit smaller, and the design gets a little bit older. So, he's having to work a lot harder to win these battles, but he's still winning. And sometimes there's, a planet, sometimes an asteroid field. Same thing as battle schools, some obstacles, so he knows how to get around them. And he's doing great, but the battles are coming faster and faster and faster. He's going on less sleep, and some of these battles take 18 to 20 hours, and none of them can get up. So his battle commander is getting wiped out too. They're making mistakes. It's just mentally they're drained because they've been going on like this for seems like a month now. But they said to help him out, they gave him one cheat device. So basically, they have what they call the molecular disbursement device, and for short they call it the MD or the doctor device because MD, medical doctor. So what this does is that if you shoot this into a big mass, it'll use that mass of whatever you shoot it into to explode exponentially. So the larger the thing is, the more explosion you get, and the more the chain reaction happens. So if you have a large mass of ships in one place, you can use that to kind of do a chain reaction so that they use the mass and everything else on top of it to generate this huge explosion. But if they're spread out too far, you're going to waste it on just a couple of ships. So Ender uses this one time, to kind of win a battle that, he didn't have to have any losses for. He's like, I'll just use it now. So he did, but after that, all the enemies started spreading their ships out so he couldn't use it again. So at this point, Enders has his own private teacher now. He doesn't have, teachers in battle school, and his private teacher is Mazer Rackham. So it's the actual guy, even though this happened like 80 years ago, the guy looks, almost the same he did back then because he's been literally traveling around in light speed, in relativistic speeds, to wait for, someone worthy enough to teach. So what Ender said, Ender immediately has a fight with the guy, and the guy kicks his butt. But he kind of teaches him that, hey, you got to be ruthless if you want to win. So he's like, okay, from now on, all these other games after this are going to be against me. So they get harder and harder to win because he's going up against a guy that literally won the last war by himself. So finally it gets to a breaking point. Ender doesn't get up for a battle, or he just passes out, and they're like, what the heck do we do? So, his battle commanders kind of have to salvage it, and they barely come out of it, but they're like, okay, we got to give him a little bit of a break or we're done with him. So they're like, okay, Ender, we know you've been treated like crap. We know we push you past all your boundaries, but we got one more battle, and that's it. And then you graduate. It's like, all right, fine. He's like, I just want to be done with this. So he goes into the battle, and it's exactly like the last battle against Bonzo, that he's got pretty much the whole armada around a lone planet, protecting it, and there's literally so much data coming for that they have the individual enemy ships blinking in and out because the computer can't process it. So, and Ender's just got his oldest, his most sluggish fighters, and with a less amount in his group this time. So he's like, "Are you kidding me?" He's like, "All right, I'll just do what I did last time. Say F it. All right, let's do a formation because formations were never the thing that he did. That was everyone else's thing in battle school." So he has a formation of basically a big funnel. So at this point, he goes against the enemy, and because his strategies up until that point were to save as many of his ships as possible without the least amount, the enemy's kind of cautious. They're like, okay, well, usually he saves all his ships, so he's got to be doing something that's going to, have an avenue of retreat. But he goes further and further towards a planet, and eventually the enemy decides, oh, he's not going to do anything. He's just going to, die against everyone. So they start attacking him from all sides, and he's trying to get towards a planet, and everyone's going, what's this for? And finally, the inside this cone is one ship with the MD device on it, And it gets through and blows up the entire planet. And because it's a planet and not just like a bunch of ships, the explosion takes up the entire VR area, simulation area. I'm gonna sneeze. And everything goes white, and then everything goes black, and that's it. You know what? He won. He lost all his ships, but he beat the last level, the last boss. And then he looks over to the observation deck where all the teachers are, and he sees Graf and he sees Mazer up there, and they're all laughing and hugging, and they got other people there he doesn't recognize. And finally, he gets out, unhooks, and he's like, "I'm done. I beat you." And Mazer goes, "No, he didn't." He's like, "What are you talking about? I just beat you. I won every single thing. I'm done. I don't have to do this anymore." And he's like, "You were never fighting against me." He's like, "What?" He's like, "That was it. That was the real thing. We just won. You just won the war." And he's like, "No, that's impossible. That can't be." And then he starts to think, unless another thing we got from the war, from the Formix, wasn't just artificial gravity and faster than light travel. Well, if we got faster than light communication, so there was no lag if you had to send signals from one place back on Earth to another place halfway across the universe or the galaxy to another planet or another area where you could give second-by-second commands to all your fighters and ships. So with this realization that Ender literally just destroyed his enemies, like, where was the last place they took? Because that was their home world. We'd basically gone throughout their entire territory, defeated all their armies, and they brought all their queens back to the home world with all their eggs, and we just blew it up. So Ender is just devastated because he hates other people to be hurt because of him. He just committed genocide. He destroyed an entire species because he thought he was playing games. So he's absolutely just can't believe it. So a couple things happen now. One, there's a mutiny on the battle school or the command school, because just like Valentine and Peter thought, after the war was over, a lot of countries used their soldiers that had ties to their homeland, tried to stage a coup and grab all the military might for themselves. Well, that was put down, but everyone's kind of in their own bunks for about 5 days while that happened, while they had to put down the mutiny. So another thing that happens is that his brother Peter is elected the hegemon, and on the fact that even though he's a war hero, he can't come home. He can't come back to his parents and to Valentine, because all the countries would try to use him and their wars, and there are going to be wars after this for other countries, and he'd always have a target on him. So he's like, it wouldn't be right to bring him back, because he'd be a rallying cry for anyone, any country who got him. So he agrees, okay, I won't come home. I'll go out, and colonize some of these planets I just basically, left lifeless. But the good news is that Valentine is coming with him. So she's very happy, she gets to be back, reunited with Ender. Ender's very happy because he gets to see Valentine again. And a little caveat at the very end here, the game he always played, the mind game, where he can never get past the giant with the 2 poison drinks. Back in Battle School, he just goes nuts. He decides, you know what, F this, forget the rules, I'm not going to take a drink. Just goes right through the giant's eye and kills him. And then he comes back every once in a while, and the giant's dead and overgrown, and it's got some hills around. And he's like, all right, done with this game. And the teachers actually asked him, like, later on, why aren't you playing the game again? He's like, I won. It's like, well, because they still want to know what's going inside his head at any given time. And he's like, I don't have to play anymore. I won. Nothing is past the giant. I got past the giant. It's over. I won. So he goes off, a couple of years just scouring the galaxy. He gets to be around, 16, 17 at this point. And he touches down on a planet, and goes for a walk and starts to recognize some of the landmarks. He's like, wait a minute. a lot of stuff was from the game that I was playing. All those were same giant rolling hills over the giant, you know, all this other stuff. So he's like, well, after that there was just a cave. So he goes walking, and he goes to the cave and finds a nest of eggs. One egg that apparently has a queen in it. So it's the last form of queen that he finds. So he's has a path to redemption now, because the whole time he was destroying them, they were reaching out to him in his dreams and through the game, trying to understand him and trying to understand why they were coming to destroy them. So eventually it all comes down as that the Formics didn't know that every life was the same as any other life. So they thought when they were going to war that all the lives that they were just drones, you know, just mindless people, and that, you know, whenever they realized, oh wait, this is another sentient species that you know, kicked our butt, they just pulled up stakes and went back home. So they were never going to attack again. But humanity sent the fleet out and killed them because they thought they were still a threat. So with all the queens dead, all the drones die too. So Ender, at the very end of the book, goes, all right, I'm going to find a world for you to, what's the word I'm looking for, populate again. We can be safe, where you can get your species back on the roll again, but we may have to search for a very long time. And that's kind of how the book ends, you know, on that upbeat of hope for redemption for Ender and for the revitalization of an entire species of aliens. So one of the reasons why this book really stayed with me when I was a young kid was because, one, the writing was good. Two, the author really got what it's like to be a kid and kind of think of what's going on whenever these situations happen, you know, and the hierarchy of, you know, the cool kids, the bullies, you know, the smart ones, all that. By the way, the author's name is Orson Scott Card. He had 2 sequels after this that, even though I enjoyed as an adult, I couldn't get into as a kid. Just because the Ender grew up, he did all these other adult things. It gets into a lot of existentialism and what is life, you know, stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, I enjoy them now as an adult, but back then as a kid, I was like, I can't read this. This is not my cup of tea. But like I said, as a kind of awkward kid, for me to read about someone that was just as awkward, but I'd like to say brilliant and a genius, you know, not exactly like me, just to show that it kind of could be done, even if it was just a work of science fiction. That it kind of gave me something to hold on to throughout, you know, those awkward years when I was that young and I was kind of getting through all these social situations in school. So this is, like I said, one of my favorite books growing up. The third one I'm going to do, I don't know when I'm going to do it. It's just whenever it takes my fancy to do these things. I did one for my very first video. It's been like 8 months since then, 6 to 8 months. So, yeah, I think the next one I'm going to do is the Deathstalker series. Now, that is definitely a series I can recommend by an author named Simon R. Green. But until then, thank y'all so much for watching. Y'all have a good one. This is Andrew T. coming at you.